today I'm going to continue on with my discussions of the films of 1972. What were films like 50 years ago? And right now I'm going through science fiction movies, and I'm tackling a biggie, and that would be Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, if I can eliminate the glare, which is in the Criterion collection. And I was going to buy it in the recent Barnes & Noble sale, but then I decided to buy something else because Solaris is on the Criterion channel, including all the supplements, the commentary, and you can access the terrific essay by Philip Lapat at the Criterion website. But although I don't have the physical copy of Solaris, I do have the physical copy of the novel by Stanislaw Lem, which was published in 1961. It was Lem's first big international bestseller, including in the Soviet Union. Tarkovsky had a very personal project, constantly vetoed by Mosfilm, and so he thought, well, maybe they'll let me do Solaris because it was science fiction, it wasn't anything current. But he had to get the approval of Lem in order to make the film, and that was not an easy experience. But Tarkovsky does follow the basic plot line of the book, Solaris being a planet about a little bit larger than the size of Earth. It's covered mostly by an ocean of chemicals, and it's been much studied for years. There's a whole cult of Solaris studies of the ocean, and it's been thought that the ocean is sentient, that it has a brain. But all these studies have sort of become exhausted. There's only 3 scientists left on the spaceship that's hovering over Solaris. And there seems to be some strange goings on, hallucinatory experiences by the 3 scientists, perhaps psychological damage. So they send Chris Kelvin, another scientist. He's being sent up to Solaris to evaluate the situation and whether the space station might need to be closed. Now, some of the strange goings on include what could be hallucinations, but it seems real, that people are they're called guests, are suddenly appearing on the space station, and each of the scientists have their own individual guest, and it seems to come from their subconscious after they dream, and they seem totally human. That is, they seem totally human. And where are they coming from? And they're coming from this sentient being, this ocean. And then you wonder whether these guests, whether they are they gifts from the ocean? Are they malevolent? Are they meant to drive these scientists crazy? Or perhaps they're being an experiment being done on these scientists. So when Chris Kelvin reaches Solaris, he's soon to find that he will also have a guest. And the guest being his wife that's been dead, I think it's something like 10 years before. So there's differences between the novel. I'm going to talk a little bit about the differences between the novel and the Spectre of 2001 on the film. Although Tarkovsky does follow the book in many of its incidents, it does stray a good bit away from Lem's novel, and probably the most significant one for average film viewers is that this is a pretty good read. It's about 250 pages, and it's a page turner. You want to see what's going to happen next. Tarkovsky, on the other hand, is an advocate of slow cinema, and perhaps even that his narratives are his narratives, and especially when he's trying to follow an actual story, they lack a bit of coherence. There's moments when you say, "But wait a minute," kind of moments. Tarkovsky creates an atmosphere, a kind of dream-like atmosphere, and But the big difference between the novel and the movie is that Tarkovsky, and this is a long movie, 2 hours and 45 minutes, the first 45 minutes are set on Earth. There is no Earth scenes in Lem's novel. And they argued over this. Lem came to Moscow to talk with Tarkovsky about the making of the film because Tarkovsky needed his approval. And Tarkovsky wanted the movie to be 2/3 on Earth and only 1/3 in space. So there was a real difference of opinion, and eventually Lem said no way. At first he said no way, and then he finally compromised to this 45-minute opening passage. And this passage is meant to evoke the sensuality of Earth. We see water. Water is always a big motif in Tarkovsky's movies. Rain. There's lots of water falling from the heavens, a sort of manifestation of a Holy Spirit. Tarkovsky was very religious. Lem was not, and Lem thought there's only a brief in the supplements. There's just a brief little moment where Lem comments on this, and he said that Tarkovsky really wasn't interested in science fiction and outer space. He was interested in Earth and relationships on Earth. And because there's a great deal in science fiction in Lem's novel, there's a whole lot of science in the novel and scientific jargon I really didn't understand. But one of Lem's great talents as a novelist is he can keep you reading through those passages and you can even somewhat understand them. Tarkovsky really isn't interested in any of that. And plus he's interested in nostalgia. So when he's on the spaceship, it's all really about Earth. And creating a kind of dream-like atmosphere, and exploring relationships, really failed relationship. In particular for Chris, it's his failed relationship with his wife. And we also get this 45-minute opening segment is a real obstacle for somebody who's expecting a science fiction movie because it moves very slow. And it includes a 5-minute segment that was a real head scratcher. One of the former scientists who had been back on Earth for a while and had once been grilled about these strange goings on Solaris. He's there to visit Chris before Chris goes up to Solaris. And then he leaves. There's no satisfying relationships in a Tarkovsky movie, and he leaves in a car, and he drives through to a big city, and you see him in both black and white and color shots going through this very busy expressway, cars going in and out, and under tunnels, and then back and high above the city, and then back below, and then ending in nighttime in a beautiful shot. Probably the best, these aerial shots of, red, where you see the white headlights, you see the red taillights, and they're converging in some fantastic clover leaf as nightfall is coming. And you've seen that in a lot of movies. This may be the best image I've ever seen of that particular that particular kind of traffic situation. It's really beautiful, poetic. But what does it mean to the film? And as it turns out, Tarkovsky wanted to go to Japan and to film. They had some exhibition of a future world that he thought he would integrate into the movie to show, because this 45-minute segment is in the countryside, which evidently doesn't look much different than it would in 1972. So, he had trouble getting a visa. By this time the exhibition had closed, so he just photographed driving on a highway. And why 5 minutes? Well, it was very expensive for the budget for him to go to Japan, so he had to come back with something. And in fact, it did look futuristic to Soviet audiences, as we learned in the supplements, because they didn't have any of these kind of expressways. So. And the Japanese cars even looked, so much more modern than what, people in the Soviet Union were driving. And then later on, we get Chris and his guest looking at a painting by Bruegel, and it focuses in on all the little details, and it goes on. I don't know, it's a three-minute stretch of film, which always draws the film back from space back to Earth, and so the performances in the film are very good, but the actor playing Chris Kelvin, he was a stage actor. It's intimated he really didn't get along with Tarkovsky that well, because this actor wanted to have motivation, and he wanted to understand his character, and Tarkovsky just wanted him to be, and he evidently struggled with that. So his performance is sort of like darting looks here and there. Sometimes that works pretty good, because especially when he first comes to the space station, it's empty, it's shabby. There's only 3 inhabitants, and it was meant for many more inhabitants. And so there's a sense of suspense and menace when he's, doing these darting looks off to the side. But basically, he looks pained. He looks painful throughout the film. But the other 3 actors are very good, and one of them was the actor who was in many of Tarkovsky only made 7 movies. I think he was in 5 of them, and it was the actor who played Andrei Rublev. And I couldn't help thinking, why didn't he cast him in this role? Because he was a much more expressive actor. And some of the coherence of the film for average moviegoers who want to understand what's going on is in the novel. It's a first-person narration. We listen to Chris, so we know what's going on to a certain extent. Of course, the film is delving into great, mysteries, but we know what's going on. But there's no narration in the film. But I have to, at this point, mention what's really terrific about this movie, and that is the performance of Natalia Bondarchuk, who plays the guest, his wife who has died. And she's just so luminous, and she just fits right into the character so well. And the best parts of the movie are really their scenes of trying to, he trying to love her, she trying to become a human. And in the essay by Philip the Pot, he brings up vertigo. And rather than 2001, he sees more of vertigo in Solaris, especially in this chance for Chris to giving him another chance in trying to love his wife, and she becoming more human as the film progresses. Now that is sort of a nod towards 2001, where the robots, the astronauts are rather robotic. There's not much to them character-wise, whereas Hal, the computer, becomes more human, and in a bad way. Not in a good way, but in a bad way. He gets the downside of the male ego afflicts Hal, the 2001 robot. But so these scenes are really good with Natalia Bondarchuk, and there's a nice 30-minute interview. These were all for the DVD, which I believe is around 2002, perhaps. This was her favorite role. She went on to become, an actress, made 40-some movies, and also appeared on stage. But she said this was it, and she became very good friends with Tarkovsky. As I said earlier, 2001 has the shadow of 2001 looms over Solaris. Tarkovsky and his cinematographer did go and see the film. In fact, they were invited to the British Embassy to see the film. And Tarkovsky didn't like it. Tarkovsky had religious, spiritual feelings that Kubrick did not have as far as the universe. He thought that Kubrick had created a sterile universe, but in the cinematographer, he too has an interview in the supplements, and he said both of them were mesmerized by the visual splendor of 2001, but Tarkovsky did not have, even though this was a a pretty good sized budget film for Moss Films. He wasn't going to be able to do anything like what Kubrick was able to do with 2001. And Tarkovsky said that he was more interested in humanity, and that Kubrick really didn't care that much about people. We get a really good commentary, and this is by Vida Johnson and Graham Petrie, and they wrote a book, The Films of Andrei Tarkovsky, and it's sort of, their commentary sort of reads like their book, and they say in the beginning that they are, going to draw upon their book, but it's an excellent analysis of the movie and its place in Tarkovsky's career. And so a couple more, before I close though, there's a couple more. One is that Natalia Bondarchuk is the daughter of Sergei Bondarchuk. Bondarchuk being, her father being an actor, a long-time actor in movies, plus he directed the Mammoth War and Peace in the 1960s. And I didn't see the remake of Solaris that Steven Soderbergh made in 2002 with George Clooney. Stanislaw Lem was still alive at the time, and because of his dissatisfaction with Tarkovsky's film, he was really looking forward to it, but he didn't live long enough. He knew Soderbergh was making this film, this remake, and but I was kind of Solaris out, and I figure, but it intrigues me to see what Soderbergh did with the novel, and the differences between Tarkovsky and him, his version. But that'll wait for another time, I think. So Tarkovsky, an interesting filmmaker. He's the kind of filmmaker I need supplements for. I need to get some more context to it. Tarkovsky did not have a sense of humor in his films, so he's difficult for me. I always had difficulty engaging with such serious artists. But it said in the supplements that in real life he had a great sense of humor. But he cautioned everybody, don't put humor in there. I can't do humor. I don't know how to do humor. To be fair, there's not much humor in Stanislaw Lem's novel as well. So if you want a literal explanation of what Solaris means, it's a mysterious movie, a mysterious book. There are plenty. There are a whole lot. I couldn't believe how many YouTube videos there are out there on Solaris, and most of them say, what does it all mean? I'll explain it to you. I'm not interested in literal interpretations of art and movies in general, and I'm certainly not qualified to give you a literal explanation of Solaris. But I think after watching going through the supplements and then watching it again, I think my appreciation of the film and Tarkovsky in general. I've only seen Ivan's Childhood, Andrei Rublev. Andrei Rublev came before Solaris, but the Moss film did not know what to do with it. It was delayed 5 years, so Solaris came out in the meantime and won the jury prize at the Cannes Film Festival. The prestige, Tarkovsky was not admired or was not that well supported as far as Moss Film didn't know, whether they should go ahead and finance his films or not. But they did, because they knew he would bring international prestige to Soviet film. Okay, so that'll about wrap it up. I went on far too long. I apologize for that. Comments are welcome. Catch you next time.